For many of us, the concept of health is defined as absence of disease. But do you really believe that to be true? As a specialist surgeon and teacher, I have come to the firm belief that true health is a balanced state between the mind, the body, and the soul. Under the Knife with Dr. Arun is an attempt to tap into the wisdom of world experts from various fields to learn practical tools that can allow us to change our own destiny. Not just in the field of health and wellness, rather in every facet of a fulfilled life. But it begins with health. Because as Emerson said, health is our first wealth, the value of which is only recognized when it is lost. Join me in welcoming another global expert in this episode as we explore some amazing self-empowering ideas today. And decided to run several marathons, almost 12 marathons if I'm correct. And there has been a lot of learning and personal growth that took place in those marathons. And she's written a book about it called Running in Circles. And I'm very keen to touch upon all of that. So thank you so much, Gill, for taking out the time to speak with me about your journey and sharing the lessons learned with my audience.
Oh, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm looking forward to seeing where this journey takes us today.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So tell us a little bit about I'm curious to start with the marathon, if you can allow me. I know I'm skipping a few decades. I would like to go backwards and forwards a little bit, but tell me, what was the driver to go from being the CEO of direct sales? And I think if I'm correct in saying it was CEO of Direct Sales Australia. Is that right? Were you in Australia?
Yes, but I wasn't at the time that I took up running.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your driver for going into running with such an enthusiasm.
Well, it's a really interesting story, and I didn't really realize it until in hindsight. And hindsight's a great teacher. But I moved my family, my husband and my two children, out to Australia in the year 2000. I was offered a CEO role of a direct selling company, and we moved lock, stock and barrel, which is new. That was at the age of 40, and with two high school children. And people think it's easy moving to Australia from England because it's the same language, but it isn't the same language. Australian, as opposed to English, is very different. And education here was different, work life is different. And so we very much, my husband and I, dedicated the 5 or 6 years to really settling in Australia, making sure the children were, in high school, and building both of our careers. And I'd never been a CEO before, so that was quite scary for me. It was another big step. And so there was a lot of it was family stuff. We were concentrating on that, and the driving around on a Saturday of the school sport. Who knew Australia spent all day Saturday driving children to sport? I didn't know that. And then I woke up one day and I realized something was missing for me. All of it was ensuring that everybody else, because the decision had been for my job to move here, so I felt responsible. And I woke up one morning and I remember turning to Chad, my husband, and just saying, this is just not enough for me. I think he was worried I was going to say, let's move to another country. And I said, no, I just need something that's mine. And randomly, and I do believe when you put it out to the universe, and if you then start, a great believer in signs.
Totally.
If you look for the signs, something's going to come in. And I saw, within a week of that, I saw a TV advertisement for an organization called Can2. They're a running organization. They're a charity. And they were predominantly at the time in Sydney, and they were running an ad we will teach you to run if you help us raise money for cancer research. So then I went, I really felt that was something that I could do. I realized that I was missing my community. I had a stack of friends back in England, and I'd helped out at the youth club. I'd done lots of, if you like, volunteer work, community work. And I realized that was perhaps what was missing, or I thought that was what was missing. And so this was a 3-month program. I signed up to learn how to run a 10K run. And it was the Sydney Bridge Run, which is run every September in Sydney still now. And so I signed up and went, I can raise $1,000 for charity. I can learn to run, and I might meet a few new people, because I hadn't met that many people in Australia because we'd been too busy.
Yeah.
And that's how my running career started. I turned up at the Oval in Willoughby, north of Sydney, on a very cold winter's night in July. And I ran around the Oval about, I think, 4 times. And I was incredibly proud of myself, having never run
You thought
before.
that was the end of it?
And that was it. I thought that was it. I thought it was done. And then the trainer, Coach Fee, as she became known to us, she became a great friend of ours. She said, right, we've done the warm-up. Now we'll start the training.
Wow.
And I just turned to this woman by the side of me. I can't repeat what I said. And I went, you've got to be kidding me. I'm exhausted.
I know.
And she said the same. And in my book, that's how I met Helen, who's become a lifelong friend. And Helen and I are interwoven in our lives. We're family, really.
Wow.
And from that moment on, my running career started. So that I was 47. I ran across the Harbour Bridge. And that race finishes at the Opera House in Sydney. And it's iconic for somebody living in Australia, but for somebody who's not Australian, the Opera House is. And the one thing that changed my life completely was, as I ran across towards the steps of the Opera House, there was a volunteer who was giving out medals. And I didn't know you got a medal for running a 10K. I'd not done my research. And she placed this medal around my neck. And I suddenly felt like a world champion. I went, oh, that instant recognition. It makes me now go goosebumps. I've still got that medal. And it changed my life, because I went, if I can do this, what else can I do? And that's how running started. And Helen and I crossed the line together. And we celebrated like we were world champions. It was only 10K, but it was a long way to us. And I've never forgotten how far it felt. And from that day on, we then said, let's do something else. Let's train for a half marathon. We did a half marathon around Sydney streets the following May. And then we went, after a couple of champagnes, we said, why don't we give a marathon a go? And that's how
that must have been such a big leap, right?
Oh, it was. It felt, yes, it felt such a big thing. You know, even when you think about running from 10K to 21, which is the distance of a half marathon, you've then got to double it for a marathon. And but we were both very busy, you know, CEOs. She was CEO of a principal of a high school, private school. I was CEO of a business. We both had children. And I suppose so we just felt if we could do this one thing for ourselves, it was claiming something back for us, for our well-being, for our, you know, physical well-being, but actually it was more mental. We didn't know it at the time, but we thought it would help us physically. We were both, you know, if you think about late 40s, you're perimenopause, there's all these other changes going on. And it was time for us to, we thought, physically take care of ourselves. And so running a marathon is probably not the best challenge, but, you know, we decided that's what we do. And we were only ever going to run one marathon. And so we decided if it's going to be one, and I think there's a lesson in here about if you're going to do it properly. We were both working silly hours at work. And so we needed a good excuse to train and not miss the training, because that's one of them. And so we made an even bigger decision. If that wasn't bad enough, running 42.195 kilometers, we then said, well, let's go and do it around Paris. So, because then you can't miss the training, because you've already invested. Accommodation, you've committed. And it taught me a huge thing about goal setting and other things in my life, about once you are committed, nothing was going to stand in my way of running that marathon.
But Gill, if I can just interrupt you briefly there, the way I'm seeing this is, you know, hindsight is always great, because, you know, you can always join the dots when you look back, right? But I think the first step that I'm trying to break it down for my audience as well, or anybody who'd be listening to this conversation, that I think it started with you recognizing when you were having a chat with your husband that, you know, something is missing here. I need my space. It's actually that awareness. That's how I'm hearing what you're saying, that, that awareness that I need to take out time for myself. Because I think as busy, high functioning professionals, we all know that we are like always on go, 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 and always giving of ourselves to others. We are providers, like provide this need for me, provide. In fact, in medicine, healthcare providers in Australia have got a provider number. The Medicare actually gives us a provide. And I remember when I first came to Australia in 2005, I got my provider number. I said, wow, that's such an interesting name to give. And then I realized, wow, we are all providers at the end of the day. That was like hilarious to actually put it in that way. But we are always giving away of ourselves without filling our own cup. And I
there's
think
a reason. Sorry
that's
to
the
interrupt. There's a
midlife
reason.
crisis.
On the aeroplane, they say put the oxygen mask on yourself
Absolutely,
before
before
others,
helping
and
others. Yeah.
it's
But I mean, Phil,
recognizing that.
I also feel that that is where it leads to the midlife crisis, because you've never actually taken out time. You've been going for the next shiny object, and you never take out time to replenish yourself.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what led from that one marathon. And I do a bit of running. I don't do marathon running. I'll be honest about it. I want my knees to last me a little bit longer before I go for knee replacement. But that's a separate topic. The point is that I do run, and I know the kick that you get when you do something consistently, whether it's a cold morning, it's a hot morning, whatever it is, you do. What led to the multiple 12 marathons that you've done across the globe? So tell us a little bit of that journey.
Some would say it was an addiction.
It sounds like it.
It's an interesting question, and I've the second one we did. The reason I did the second one, and then that led to others, was
that
Helen
the one in
I,
Paris, the second one?
The first one was Paris,
okay.
And Helen and I did that alone. But we were part of a running community by then.
Yes.
And that was something else that running gave me, was this sense of community and friends from diverse backgrounds. And when we got back, many of them said, oh, now we had inspired them. They wanted to run one. So we said, well, if you want to run one as well, we'll do it with you. Of course we will.
Of course.
And so we were fortunate then. A group of us said, well, let's do another one. And so we decided that in 2010, we would do another one. And we would all run as a group. So we trained as a group. We used to meet up during the week. And suddenly we had this group of us that were running the second one. And that was why I did the second one. Then I realized, again, it's about listening to the voice in your head.
Yes.
And I found that the training element of a marathon, which is, maybe 16 weeks, some people train for longer, but the discipline, I actually enjoyed the training just as much as the event.
The actual run. Yes.
Because for me, it was consistency. I'm not good at holding myself accountable and getting out and doing stuff. I will put other people's needs first. But if I've signed up for an event, then I know I've got to do the 4 runs a week. I've got to do the strength training. I've got to eat better. I'm a huge believer in, great nutrition and high quality supplements and things. So when I'm training for the marathon, my whole life is better. Everything is elevated. And so I realized in myself that I needed those goals and that little shiny medal to motivate me to look after myself better and not be a workaholic and not sit at my desk for too many hours. And so for me, it was the process of training that made me do more. And the goal setting. I love goals. I love, and suddenly I realized I had an opportunity potentially to do what they call the world majors. And they were the sort of 5 at the time international.
So these are international marathons, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
5 international marathons.
Wow.
I'd done a couple by then, and I went, oh, if I can do 2, maybe I can do the 5. And then it became 6 because they added one in. And so it became a much bigger goal. It became, instead of just running the next marathon, I had a much bigger goal because I was aiming to do the 6.
Yes.
So over the 10 years, the reason I did the 12 is I was doing others while I got the opportunity to run those international international ones.
So are you still running marathons, Gill?
Well, yes.
Okay, good. No, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So it's not stopped at 12. Just checking. You clearly addicted, you know. It's like, you know, an alcoholic saying to another one, "Oh, you are having a drink, I'll have a drink with you. No problems," you know.
Well, again, we sort of we've started with the end in mind. I recently stepped down in my CEO role at the end of last year because I felt it was time for me to recreate myself, and I'm calling it my 3rd act.
Yes.
And at the beginning of the year, my husband and I went traveling, and I must admit, stepping down from a big role, I felt a little bit lost. And I was, and so, I mean, he said to me, "You need to go run." And I went, "No, I need a goal."
Yeah.
So I just published my book, and I had several friends who said, "Oh, your book has inspired us to run Sydney Marathon."
Wow.
And I went, "Oh, well, if you're going to do it, I've never done that one." And
I'll do it
so
with you.
Sydney Marathon in September is coming up. So yeah, I'm training for that one. Yeah.
But Gill, if we took a couple of steps back, I think you have shared so many key things over there on that journey. Like the 2 key things that I have picked up immediately. One is consistency and the other is commitment, you know. And I think I truly believe that consistency always trumps intensity. We feel that a lot of us in our lives start with that new shiny thing. We are intense about it, but then it fades off. Like I see a lot of individuals who are experiencing health issues because of excess weight. They start on a diet, they are really consistent, counting calories, moving a lot, lose some weight, but then after that, it creates a state of fatigue and burnout. And, you know, you can't sustain on diets. And I say to patients and individuals who come to seek my opinion that, you know, consistency is more important. Dieting does not work in the long run. Good quality nutrition and time to manage your stress and being mindful are the things that work in the long run. And that's kind of, you know, what my message is, that be consistent with what gives you joy. And the second thing is about commitment. Be committed to it, committed to your own health and well-being, because if you're healthy, you can help somebody else. You know, as Abraham Lincoln said, you know, I love his quote that he said, "You can't help the poor by being one of them. I say you can't help the sick by being one of them," you know. So that's the message that I have taken. And I love it because these 2 qualities are so integral to being a great leader. And leader to me doesn't mean that you have to be a president of a country or an organization. You can be a mom and you can still be a leader to your kids. You can be role modeling them. So can I ask you, how have you taken these 2 qualities, because you clearly demonstrate them and you live them? You don't just demonstrate them, you live them. How have you taken it to mold what you are doing in your life now and potentially doing with your life in the future?
Yeah, I think that's and I love the way you talk about role modeling and consistency. And jumping back to one of these things that you said there about diet, and I think it's really important that, you know, my background, my mum died from obesity-related disease, you know, back 25 years ago now, but she was overweight her whole life. And I grew up with that. I saw the impact of bad nutrition and poor health. And I think recognizing that and recognizing where you're come from and then changing the story, that was also part for me of why I wanted to role model something different for my children. The consistency for me and the commitment is because of the accountability. Taking it a step further, I'm a firm believer in, you need an accountability coach. You need somebody, a mentor, a coach, to keep you honest, to keep you to that. And the goals go a long way for that.
Yes.
But I know for me, if I've committed to meet somebody at 7 a.m. for a run, I will not let them down. If I'm only going out by myself, I might hit snooze and it may
Exactly.
never happen.
You know,
So
as they say, human beings are more accountable to others than they are to themselves.
yeah. So that for me, I've taken those learnings into my work life. And I think what it's done, it's had a huge impact on the roles that I've done and holding my staff accountable, committed to what they're doing. They see that I'm consistent in what I do, and they will then be able, when I talk about that, I'm also, it's monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you can't say things if you're not living the truth. And I've worked in health and well-being for companies for the last 20 years. It would be difficult to be authentic and, you know, have my integrity if I wasn't living that truth. But I firmly believe that for me, the commitment has come because I found something. I'm very lucky. I found something I was passionate about. It wasn't hard to be committed. And I talk about it in my book of, and in particular I'm very committed to women moving more in menopause. That's my goal now, is to move more. It may not be running a marathon. It might be pickleball, this fastest growing sport right now worldwide. It might be park run. I'm a huge believer in park run every Saturday in all our local communities across Australia. There's a free group of people that you can go and join and walk and run. It's finding something and listening to that little voice. And I think once you get committed on a great eating plan, great nutrition, great exercise, it's, I suppose for me, I used to be a home economics teacher. It's the recipe. It's collecting all the ingredients and making them all fit in balance to make that perfect cake. And the nutrition doesn't work, if I don't believe, if you're not exercising, if you're not getting fresh air. I just can't
I
sing the
totally agree
praises
with
enough
you,
about
Gill.
fresh air and the meditation. People talk about meditation. I'm still yet to learn how to do it. You can see I'm a bit hyper, but I meditate while I'm running. I make my
I was
biggest
going to say
life
that, you know,
decisions. Yeah.
absolutely, you know, meditation, running, and I tell this to people, like, I'm a yoga and a meditation teacher registered with Yoga Australia, but I tell patients, meditation doesn't mean that sitting in a lotus position and focusing on your belly button, not at all. Like, you could be doing painting, and that's meditation. It's basically bringing your mind into the present moment, really.
Yeah.
And I think on what you said about nutrition and movement, that is so true, Gill, that nutrition by itself cannot do anything for you. It's a good starting point. But I think what is important to also recognize is that you have to constantly educate yourself, be a learner. That's what I say, you know, education or information creates transformation.
Very wise words.
Oh, look, you know, and I think these are all sort of lessons that you learn as you go along and you meet people like yourself. So tell us a little bit about, Gill, I'm keen to know how, I'm sure you would have had some challenges during your sort of time of, you know, starting to move from UK to here, which itself is a challenge. I'm a migrant as well. I came to this country in 2005. Didn't have kids at that stage, but, you know, that's another story. Long and short is there are always some challenges that we face. What was your challenge? One big challenge, if you can share with us, that comes to mind, and how did you sort of, you know, grow from that?
Yeah, well, interesting. We're talking about health and well-being, and through my running journey, one of my biggest challenges was my husband had a stroke about 15 years ago.
Right.
And so my challenge after that event was, he was fine and absolutely recovered, but it was an absolute shock to me that at, you know, a young age this could happen. And so for me, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about resilience, I had to, at that point, decide how I was going to deal with this situation. And running helped me, because at that point, there were other sort of circumstances and health-related issues that we knew at that point he would probably not work. And I became the sole income earner. So there was a few months there where I had to really look at myself and look for the signs and go, oh, now I've got to put, you know, my big girl pants on and step up to this challenge. initially it froze me. I was totally, like, how am I going to do this? How are we going to, survive on one salary, and how blah, blah. But then over a period of a few months, as I ran and thought about it and meditated as I'm running, I go, no, if you can cross the line of a marathon, you can do this.
Yes.
That original sort of goal that I had no idea, but knowing I could do that, I could challenge myself and overcome it,
Yes.
gave me the inner knowing to go, I can do this, I've got this, and just to breathe it through and go, yeah, I've got this, I can do this. And from the moment I really decided, you have no choice, you this is it. I thrived. I got a new job, I got a promotion, I got, it's like, wow, the minute you let go of that fear, and just trust the signs and take action. And you can't just expect it all to happen. I'm a great believer you've got to take the steps and take action.
Absolutely.
But that overcoming that was probably the biggest thing I've had to overcome.
Yeah, must have been. And I think from what I'm hearing is that's where you're running, because I truly believe that, I know this, that anybody who's out there who says that they are consistent in their practice have to go through the same emotions in the morning. Shall I go? It's too cold today. It's raining outside. You come up with that excuse. And, I've kind of trained my brain that every time I come up with that excuse, I have to do it. There is no excuse. So it has taken me a while to do it. Don't get me wrong. I've had my chicken out reasons, reasons to chicken out, I should say. And we all do. But I think that's where it is really important to understand that this is the most important muscle that you have to build in your body, is the mental muscle, which is resilience. So if I can talk to you a little bit about resilience, what is your practice, or what does your routine look like to build resilience?
Yeah, that's a great one. And something that I learned very early on in my direct selling career, and that was back in the UK, was I used to get very overwhelmed by situations and things. And a really good mentor of mine at the time, Anne, said to me, she just said, stop. How do you eat an elephant? First of all, went through my head, why would you bother? But anyway, and I'm like, okay, I'll go with it. And then she said, Gill, it's one bite at a time, one step at a time. You'll see, I have a chain of elephants around my neck. It's a gold chain of elephants.
Wow.
I've had this now for 20 years. I've run every marathon in it. It's my mantra. So when you talk about resilience, how do I face these big situations? How do I run a marathon? How did I face my husband's illness? I have to break it down. I have to not get overwhelmed by the big picture. I have to take it a day at a time. I'll take a run. Some days it may only be a 5K run, and I hear you, that little voice in your head goes off. But I also I always start with the end in mind of I know how I'm going to feel when I've been out for a run. I know how I'm going to feel when I've achieved this. And I sort of take it one bite at a time, but I've got the end in mind. So I find with a lot of challenges I've had through my work career, when you get made redundant and you're the sole income earner, it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary. Absolutely. But you just breathe it and you go, right, today I'm going to sit at my computer and I'm going to apply for jobs. And I'm going to do that until there are no jobs left to apply for, and then I'll go for a run. And then tomorrow I'm going to do the same again. And those things I've learned through my direct selling career that I've implemented in running have also helped me in all of my leadership roles. So for me, it's just breathing, saying yes to opportunities. I feel with resilience, sometimes we're so frozen by fear but if you can just say yes to one thing, and again, I talk about it in my book, is just say yes. All the traffic lights are never all on green.
No.
They're never all on green. So you just go with the first one. And if you've got a little feeling you build that resilience muscle day by day by day. And so you just take the next step or the next thing, or you go, how do I just get through today? If it's just walking the beach and, dealing with it, you just do it. And they go, great, I did that. I'm not a big gratitude journal person, but I do believe in feeling grateful.
Yes.
I think you can tell by my personality, I don't sit still very much. I don't write stuff down. But for me, I feel grateful for what I've achieved, and then I'll go, right, tomorrow I'll just stretch that muscle a little bit more.
Yeah, awesome. So, and of course, running. Do you run every day, Gill?
No. 3-4 times a week.
Sorry?
3 or 4 times a week.
3 or 4 times a week. Okay, got it. So there is no daily practice that you do to build that resilience muscle. But running is your time when you give yourself that muscle to kind of, give it a good workout.
Yes. Yeah. Although I don't run, I'm a great believer in yoga, and I swim. So for me, it is exercise, it's moving my body. But I don't have a daily ritual that does it. I think it's inherent in me, and
that's such a beautiful.
I find myself sitting in meetings often going, how am I going to do this? And I'm just like, okay, one bite at a time, one step at a time.
Yeah, now that's awesome, because it immediately reminds you, it grounds you when you touch that chain that you have around your neck, and it's so subtle, only you know it. Nobody else can work it out that, okay, why is she touching her chain? So, but
most people know now. I've done too much public speaking.
I mean, like, of course, the more you're telling about it, but the point is that, and I have got some such cues as well, which I keep for myself. They only have a meaning for me, and nobody else knows about it. And that is pretty. I carry, I'll tell you what it is. I carry a little rock in my pocket. It's a beautiful crystal that I carry in my pocket, and it reminds me always that you're always guided and taken care of. That's my affirmation to that. The moment I touch it, that is the immediate. I've trained my brain to believe that you're always guided and taken care of. So if there's a problem, the guidance will come. So, I mean, look, I think this is great. And Gill, I know we are running short of time, but there's one thing that I wanted to touch upon, and which was about empowerment for women, which is your biggest message now. And I can see that that probably is your life purpose. I can feel that. I haven't heard that from you, but I'm just sort of making it up, connecting the 2 and 2. So tell me a little bit about what is, firstly, why is there so much talk about women empowerment? Like, I know it's not a new thing. It's been there for a long time, that women are suppressed, women are oppressed, women don't get opportunities, there's gender inequality. And now I read somewhere that there are 72 different types of genders. Now, where are we getting lost with it? And what is the real meaning of women empowerment?
Oh, that's a big question. For me, and I can only talk for me, is that I firmly believe that there's a cohort of women, I suppose my generation, who we weren't brought up to believe everything was possible. We didn't believe enough in ourselves. Our roles were very different in our 20s. I stepped out of those roles, and I was very lucky to have a very, very supportive husband and partner. He's allowed me to make some decisions in my life, like giving up my teaching career to run a small home-based business, a direct selling business, party plan business. And I did that for 10 years. But he allowed me to listen to my intuition and allowed me to grow and empower myself. That's beautiful. Which empowered the family, obviously, and led to many things. So I had a great coach in the UK, and when I spent some time with her, she identified, like you, this is your mission, Gill. This is why because you've taken those few steps more than other women. Just teach them how to take the next few steps. Yeah. And for me, there are the next generation, I don't think are going to even understand why we had to talk about women empowerment. I have an amazing daughter who's in her mid-30s. She's grown up with obviously a lot of opportunities, and grown up with a very different view of the world as a female. And so she'll listen to this and think, well, what are you talking about? Of course women are empowered. But firmly believe there is a generation, a cohort of women, and I'm talking about my generation, that that haven't reached their full potential, that haven't listened. We weren't taught to listen to the inner voice. We didn't know what meditation was. We weren't raised with yoga. And I feel it's bringing out that huge inner potential that every woman has. That is, for me, a great mission in this third act of my life as I start to public speak and, do things differently. Even just the last 6 months doing things differently has empowered other women to make decisions because they've got, well, if she can give up work, do things differently. So it's a big question, and I perhaps haven't answered it as well as I could have done, but I think it's my thoughts are it's generational, that this will change.
And I think Gill, it's also about, I feel, giving yourself the permission to do it. I think that's where the society is living under conditioned beliefs. I think that like our generation, and I can say this broadly, when I was growing up in India, when I finished my grade 12, which is the final year at school, I only had 3 options. My parents were like, either you're becoming a doctor or an engineer or a failure in life. That's it. So, I mean, there was a lot of pressure. There was nothing else. These days, I tell my kids, you've got so many options. The world is an open oyster for you. Go and find your pearl, so do whatever you want to do. So, I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, that the current generation may or may not appreciate this, but I think there is still a need for being able to give yourself the permission to live your best life. And that is a skill that every generation will need to learn, regardless of where they are in their life. And it's never too late to start that journey either.
And I think on that, it's a really good point, but it's also not only giving you permission to live your best life, but to live a different life. So many people get stuck and stay in their lane, and I lived a different life because I gave up my teaching career, which my mother took 6 months to.
You were literally running in your lane as a marathon runner, right? You were literally doing it.
But I've done things differently, and every time I've done something different, that's built my resilience muscle. That's helped me go, well, if I can do that, I can do this. So they talk about stepping outside of your comfort zone, which is a bit of a cliche, but if you're continually testing the boundaries of where you can go, you will stretch yourself. An elastic band never goes back to its original shape. So if you continually push yourself and listen to the signs and act on them, it's amazing where you can go, particularly women. But you have to be able to do things differently.
And I think, as one of my mentors put it, he says, you never need to compare yourself to others. Just be a better version of yourself than how you were yesterday. That's it. You don't have to outsmart anyone else. Just outsmart the version of you that you had for yourself yesterday. That's all. So, I mean, there is a lot of strength to that. And Gill, can I commend you for the amazing learning and the amazing journey that you have lived, and you have demonstrated so much courage, commitment, resilience, and also consistency. Like being a marathon runner, I couldn't expect anything else. But I mean, it's one thing to talk about it, and I've seen many people who live a certain life but talk a different life, and I don't see that congruence, that authenticity in there. So thank you for that. Look, I know we are running short of time, and I want to thank you for giving away of your time so generously. And as I come to the end of every interview that I do with my guests, I ask them these 3 questions. So if you're open to that, I might be let's get started. Is that all right, Gill?
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
You've got me worried now.
my first question is, Gill, what is your, and I think I kind of can guess the answer to this one, but what is your most successful habit that has brought you to where you are today? What would you say that number 1 habit would be?
Is setting goals.
Right.
Consistently setting goals and committing to them. It's being committed. It's
being committed.
Stepping out. Being committed. Absolutely. And not letting anything stand in my way. That's
beautiful. The second question is, Gill, if all your work you know, whatever you're doing, public speaking, writing books and amazing programs and everything that you're doing, if hypothetically speaking, all of that was taken away, what would be the 3 pieces of wisdom or 3 truths, as I call it, you would want to give to your kids?
I would want my kids to live their best, to reach their full potential. The wisdom would be to take risk. Don't live a safe life. You know, take risks.
Take risks.
Be authentic. Be true to yourself in doing that. Absolutely authenticity. And I think follow your intuition. You know, listen to that. Listen to that inner voice. It's so important to listen to that.
Beautiful. So just to recap for everybody, number 1 advice is take risks. Number 2 is be authentic. And number 3 is follow your inner voice, the intuition, that small voice within, you know. That's beautiful. And Gill, the last question I have is, what do you see as your legacy? What is the next big thing that you're working on? Tell us about that.
Oh, the next big thing. That's a really good question. I have no idea. I'm letting the universe in. I'm calling this my 3rd act. I stepped down from a big role.
Yes.
And I promised my mentor, Julie, that I would wait and see. I've pushed all my life since I was 11, worked. Took up my first paper round when I was 11 to bring money in for the family.
Yeah.
And every time I've been fighting that, charging up the career ladder, as I said, I had to earn money. My husband, I was the income earner. So I've always been the driver. This year, I've just taken the step back.
Yes.
I'm launching a website as of probably this afternoon.
Wow. Awesome.
And I want to see what the universe is. I want to listen to the voice. I want to see what the universe has planned for me in the next sort of 10 years. I'm doing some public speaking. I've written 1 book. Will I write another one? Yes, maybe.
It's just like a marathon, right? You ran one, now you're going to run another one. Of course, you're addicted now.
I really want
I know the feeling.
I really want to inspire women to move more in menopause. So that's my goal. How that's going to happen, I have no idea. I'm very happy to trust that the universe has a plan for me somewhere.
Of course it does. And you're letting the ideas marinate, as you know, Wayne Dyer puts it.
Yes.
You know, the famous speaker, and he was my mentor in many ways, said, let the ideas marinate. You'll come up with a beautiful recipe. So awesome, Gill. I acknowledge you for the amazing work that you're doing. I thank you for sharing your wisdom, your life experience. You know, like I think every life experience is wisdom. It is teaching us something. We just have to have the right perspective, the mindset to be able to appreciate the journey, because who knows, you know, we might pick up some pieces of some nuggets, as you call it in your book, nuggets. So, you know, pick them up and apply them in our lives. So Gill, thank you so much for your time. I commend you once again for your work. Acknowledge all the marathons that you've run to learn the lessons, and look forward to seeing your great work unfold.
And I really thank you for the conversation. It's been really engaging. I've loved it. Thank you for inviting me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Gill. You take care.
Thank you.